Okay.
Sir, we are live.
Okay. Thank you. Let me go through the usual process. I, okay. Okay, guys, can you see my PPT and hear my voice properly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So, in fact, we are on the second last unit of this block one on politics of migration policies with implication for foreign policy and national security. We are talking about investment and entrepreneurship. In fact, we last time talked about in Unit 48 about remittances. And we saw how the Indian diaspora today is one of the biggest diasporas, and the fact that Indian remittances are the largest in the world in terms of a community. We've crossed about 100 billion uh, in terms of remittances. Okay. So, remittances economics in terms of money being sent home. However, remittance has its limitation in terms of the fact that if remittance is used, let's say, for non-economic activities like basic food or basic household expenditure, then it is not generating any money. And inevitably, with money, unless there is a circulation of money, money finishes, money goes out. Economics in terms of GDP or growth or development typically happens when money circulates around. So let's look at how diaspora investment and entrepreneurship works. In fact, parallelly, for a lot of people who joined late, maybe next to next class, I'll take a small class on a difference between migrants, diaspora, and transnational. So there's a whole new aspect of study called transnational. Uh, Basically, today, all people who are crossing borders are effectively transnational in a particular way because you are crossing a border, you're crossing a nationality. Plus, the fact is today worldwide, when people migrate, they don't just migrate to one place and settle down. They can keep moving, or they can form networks across nations, and the concept of transnationality comes out there. So we look at how these concepts are changing. In fact, in diaspora studies, migration and diaspora studies itself, there are multiple niche level of studies which have come in. So we will take one class on those theories and methodologies. But let's talk about investment and entrepreneurship. So let's start by objectives. How do you define major classification? How are they different from other entrepreneurs? Investment opportunities offered to India, and we are looking because the whole unit is India centered. In fact, the whole block is India centric, so we will take the Indian example. We have been talking a lot about how globalization has enhanced practical economic and effective roles of diaspora, because transportation, the means of transportation have increased and have become faster. Besides the transportation, the connectivity. Today, everybody is 24 by 7 connected. You can do a voice call. You can you can send messages. So the connectivity is there. Recent years, the impact of globalization, growing evidence of diaspora and entrepreneurship in India, extension of transnational networks, integration towards home countries started to become more and more familiar with regulatory changes in the. Now, inevitably, when the earliest migrants went out, they were not able to connect back. There was always this thing about homeland. It was an imagination thing. But now that imagination is, translated into connectivity, and that connectivity has led to more engagement. Post-90 liberalization create environment for diaspora entrepreneurship, service sectors, especially IT, education, infrastructure. There are a few examples in the unit about how entrepreneurship in health, in IT, and so on and so forth. In fact, the way things have moved worldwide, not just in India, worldwide. I on my social media feed, I was seeing how this Chinese surgeon performed a lung operation sitting 5,000 kilometers away. He was in one part of China, and using a robotic system, he performed an operation in another part of China, separated hugely, and a successful operation. So think about the opportunities this has in terms of technology. In fact, the next unit is on knowledge and technology transfer, how humanity essentially can collaborate, and how with all these technology and globalization and connectivity, human beings can actually enhance their productivity and effectiveness across the world. And how borders become a more of a political thing rather than anything else, playing an important role in increasing bilateral trade. uh, where is my where did the mouse go? Okay, sorry. Are you able to see my slides moving, the PPT slides moving? Guys, are you able to see the PPT slides moving?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. I asked because, okay, thanks. Entrepreneur activities can be seen as introduction of new goods or quality of, see, inevitably, any process or any activity can always become better. More often than not, that is the collective knowledge or creativity of human beings. uh, and today, one of the best aspects of internet and social media, for example, is that, on say for example, on social media, almost 2.5 billion people are connected. Now, if countries or political parties or politicians or organizations want to make anything better, all they need to do is ask, and inevitably you will have. And remember, as I keep telling you, academics and scholarship is all about perspectives. More often than not, every two people may see the same thing differently. When we look at anything, we all look at it differently. And this is how entrepreneurship comes in. Introduction of new goods or quality of a good, introduction of new method of production, opening up a new market, utilization of new sources of supply. And when people collaborate, inevitably the process becomes better, or the product becomes better, or new markets come in. And that's what entrepreneurial activity is all about. Entrepreneurs can be seen as innovative industrial leaders who assume the risk. And inevitably, whenever you try and do something new, there's a risk involved. So, for example, if you've never invested in a stock market and for the first time you're doing it, obviously there's a risk involved, associated with uncertainty, and organize and coordinate economic recourse to fulfill the wants of society and equally try. And that's where there is a hope. So we are today worldwide seeing the aspects of climate change, and people are trying to find out how to mitigate this climate change. So there is a whole body of people who are trying to figure out new ways to make things sustainable. Modern management science entrepreneurship is understood as a behavioral phenomena, as a pursuit of business opportunity in uncertainty or risk enabled areas. And if you look at human beings, there are people who like taking risks. There are people who want to follow others who take risks. There are people who wait for things to fructify before they take a decision. All kinds of people. Entrepreneurial behavior cannot be only explained by economic theory, because there's an equal importance of psychological, cultural, and sociological factors. Now, if I see this, inevitably, one conclusion I come to is the fact that when a person decides to migrate, obviously the person is taking a risk. because you are moving from an established, place, system, or things that you do, and you're going to a new place, new system, and new things. So obviously you are a risk taker. So naturally, I would assume a migrant to be a natural risk taker or an entrepreneur material, but that correlation is not as easy as we might feel. Not all migrants are entrepreneur material. They might have taken a risk in terms of movement, but that risk could be taken because of existential crisis. So if you are poor, you are not able to eat, you go out to be able to earn money, but that will not allow you to do entrepreneurship. Diaspora essentially a cultural category. Much of its knowledge, acquisition, and dissemination in strong cultural orientation, because inevitably these people are connected. The whole concept of diaspora came that it's a dispersal and these people are connected back to the homeland. While diasporas are always in the process of adjustment to new culture, innovation and entrepreneurship become a part of their adaptive quality of the host country. Now, again, this may not always, even though you are adapting and innovating, a lot of times you are in the struggle of adapting and innovating. You are only doing an existential thing. You are not able to move beyond the existential. And entrepreneurs are people who are able to move beyond the existential. Investing in their home countries have advantages, obviously, because their understanding of culture, social norms, familiar business culture. More often than not, anytime a migration happens of a person or a family, remember the family ties are still in the home country. The whole family or the familiar extensive kinship does not move. It can move. There are cases where extensive kinship moves, but inevitably there are ties back home. And if there are ties back home, and obviously there is and we can see from the kind of remittances which are happening that everybody seems to be having a tie back home. And as we talked last time, when we look at multiple readings of those remittances, one reading could be fact that there are not enough jobs being created, or the jobs are not giving enough money for people to have to move to send remittances back home. Diaspora entrepreneurships use strong ties of religion, language, and ethnicity to unite themselves, and those ties usually play major. And we have seen that again, not just in Indian diaspora, just in all diasporas. A role in their socio-cultural and intellectual as well as economic is so Israel 2005 members are often more willing than non-diaspora to take risk, which I again said that normally a migration involves a certain risk taking, unless it is a forced migration where the migrant does not have a choice. So the diaspora members are more willing to take risks. Uh, Migrants may not be the first group that come to mind when considering who's to become an entrepreneur, obviously, because there are all kinds of migration which are happening. But immigrants and their descendants are uniquely positioned to recognize investment opportunity in the country of origin. So today, for example, you have a non-resident Indian or a people of Indian origin who looks at a change happening in India because of, let's say, a budget considering. For example, the budget has reduced the custom duties on gold. There are again multiple readings on to why this has been done, but let's say there is a non-resident Indian or a person of Indian origin who has family out here and who understands precious metals, will be the first one to take this opportunity to to start a gold business or whatever. Their knowledge of local political, economic, and cultural environment. Say, for example, the way regulation works in India, the way there are all kinds of loopholes, or the way policy is formulated. Now, an Indian would be able to understand it best. In fact, a lot of times the foreigners grapple, and more often than not, they want to have an Indian consultant to help them in understanding how to do business in India. India becomes a very tough market. Similarly, if I was to look at any market, for example, if I was sitting at India today and I, let's say, want to do business in Mozambique, I would typically try and get hold of a local who understands the local market, understands the culture, understands the nuances, understands the bureaucracy, and that's how the diaspora is able to have the first mover advantage when investing or starting a business in the country of origin. Three types of diaspora who are participating in entrepreneur activity. First category is the voluntary diaspora. Gujaratis and Sindhis have always been in the business, and they've always been entrepreneurs. Sindhis can go wherever they want. They are first entrepreneurs. Gujaratis similarly, trading historically from their homeland through different networks. Our labor or colonial diasporas who went from India as indentured laborers later on got settled there. They acquired land. They acquired, started participating in the host land economy through entrepreneur expansion. In fact, the imperial diasporas have done phenomenally well for themselves. And the third type is the skilled migrants who migrated to various developed nations as healthcare or IT professionals. A lot of them, some of them came back. For example, the Apollo hospitals were set up by a person who migrated from India and then came back. A lot of IT companies similarly were made by people who came back. Influence of culture in diaspora or entrepreneurship. Culture cannot be seen as a supplementary factor. Rather, it's a big factor, obviously, because it's the same culture. You are able to understand how people react, how people work, what is the expectation. It's with a complete reflection of cultural embeddedness. So that becomes easier for one to do entrepreneurship. So there are, hang on. So then there is something called diaspora necessity entrepreneur. Diaspora necessary entrepreneur opens a business for survival. More often than not, when these migrants come back, they concentrate in petty trade, personal services, does not create many jobs, mainly cases make enough to feed the family. Necessity entrepreneurship, largely operate return migrants. In fact, a lot of migrants, when they migrate, some of them are able to open this departmental store in the sense of necessity entrepreneurship. Then there is the diaspora opportunity entrepreneur, who are filling gaps in the economy, introducing new forms of production, contribute substantially to economic growth, often creates job outside the family. There's a necessity and there's an opportunity. More likely to have positive impact on economic development. Inevitably, as I said, economic development is when there is a circulation of capital. So unless there is a circulation of capital, one is bare necessity, and then second is a circulation of capital in terms of economic development. Skilled individuals specialize in high demand and rapidly growing sectors, knowledge-based economy. For example, the web development, major developments which are happening today, and in fact, I'll come to this more type of entrepreneurs, even those with little education, strong business acumen, will perceive and take advantage of market openings. So, for example, today there are all these people who are, they are opening up cooking channels, or on social media, cooking channels or yoga channels or aerobic channels. They are looking at an opportunity. So opportunity of the fact it's a high stress life. People do not have time to go to gyms, or so they can do exercise or do cooking so these are opportunity entrepreneurs. Diasporas in developing knowledge-based sectors in China, India, Ireland, and Israel are well known, provided venture capital in connection to trade networks. Patricia Lillian distinguished four types of transnational migrant enterprises. Now, if you notice, the unit also many a times switches between diaspora and transnational migrants. So these words are switched more often than not. They mean almost the same. As I said, diaspora studies, transnational studies has become a separate study from diaspora studies. In fact, to a certain extent, it remains the same, but transnational involves many more connections. So there are nuances to the transnational studies. So these words are used switchingly during the units. Uh, Four types of transnational migrant enterprises. Something called circuit firms. Circuit enterprises are archetypical transnational business venture, sustain the flow of tangible and intangible resources between a country of origin and its migrant settlements. Sustain regular contacts with relatives who shuttle. So typically, Gujarati businesses, a lot of them are circuit business firms. From these small and informal beginnings, later provide us complex multi-million-dollar service industry. Send letters, cash, and precious packages. So inevitably, say for example, look at the fact that in North India, let's say I stay in Gurgaon. In Gurgaon, there are all these shops which are selling, South Indian masalas. Now, more often than not, these masalas are coming back from South India with people who are moving back and forth. India, in fact, it becomes a case study, a small case study for the larger world. So these people are moving back and forth, or their friends and relatives are coming, and they are providing a certain, they are providing a certain product and a service for South Indians who are settled in North India, or let's say Gurgaon. So these shops are there all the places. In fact, in a market nearby, there is this Sindhi namkeen shop, which is manned by a guy from Bihar who is an employee, but the shop is a Sindhi shop. So from these small and informal beginnings proved to be a multi-million dollar industry. These are circuit firms. Circuit enterprises, including informal and formal courier agencies for delivering of money, products. Hawala works in a circuit firm. And people who use a variety of methods to household and businesses in home and host countries. So this is one type of firm which is called a circuit enterprise. Then the second type is a cultural enterprise, tested role as stewards and promoters of national identity among migrants. For example, Indian masalas, assuming the fact that there is a whole setup in, let's say, UK or USA providing Indian masalas. Indian masala is a cultural enterprise. In daily contact with your homeland, include both ventures that produce or distribute homeland-based mass media such as newspaper, radio, TV, or produce or distribute home-based beverages or food. So, for example, Indian specific curries, or let's say chicken tikka coming from India as a packaged food, or kebabs, or in fact, the whole media industry, which is today, part of it is focused on what the foreign audience or the Indians in various places of the world are looking at, how to look at India, what's happening in India. So a person who, let's say, starts an Instagram channel on specific cuisines of, let's say, Kerala or Odisha, is able to make money based on the fact that this person has views or viewers, Oriya viewers or Keralite viewers across the world. Similarly, a diaspora person can do it in a reverse way. So these are cultural enterprises. Then there is something called ethnic enterprises, a range of small businesses, ventures, located in immigrant neighborhoods and employ exclusively home-based products that cater to a broad ethnic following. Now, the cultural enterprises could be for the larger public. So, for example, a South-based masala shop in Gurgaon could be used by northern Indians to take authentic South Indian masalas. Whereas an ethnic enterprise would be typically a South-based masala store in a neighborhood largely catering to South India. Similarly, places, let's say in the US, let's say in California, where there's a large concentration of Indians, you could have an Indian store providing Indian stuff. A small grocery or convenience store, restaurant or bakeries, retail commerce, beauty shops, auto mechanics, craft people. These are ethnic enterprises. And again, look at the fact, do not see, academics would like to differentiate in broader categories, but a lot of times there are no watertight compartments. A lot of times they happen to work together. Larger concentration of Indians worldwide, ethnic enterprise sector is more vibrant and diverse. It also has more transnational links, while many depend on steady supply of regulated and unregulated imports from homeland. Business maintain transnational supply networks. So people are going, they carry stuff with them. More like a circuit, a circuit company, like a circuit entrepreneur into an ethnic, business. Then the fourth type is the return migrant enterprise located in the homeland. The most common type is return migrant micro enterprises, including schools, universities, hospitals, infrastructure. These people categorize hospitals as a micro enterprise. Again, it depends on the size of the university or a hospital. Information technology, investment, hotels, restaurants, and service-based enterprises. Again, how you define them. So these people define these four types of opportunity entrepreneurs. Depends on transnational links and flows for their investment capital. And remember, inevitably, an entrepreneur would require capital. He would require, either it's a product or it's a service. What is the improvement that you are doing? Maintenance costs, expansion capital, working capital. Doing a business is not a simple thing, or even when you open a small shop or a small business outlet, you have to have a working capital, you need to have an investment capital, you need to have a human capital in terms of somebody manning the shop, unless it's a mom and pop shop where the people who run the establishment only manage. But when you do that, then it's basically a sustenance thing. Typically, the idea for return migrant enterprises originate with the migrants' cultural and labor experience in hostland, and the investment capital comes from the migrants' personal saving. So a person goes to the Gulf, earns a certain amount of money. Now that he has a certain amount of money corpus or a capital, he comes back and opens a business. That's a return migrants business venture. And as I said, transnational and diaspora, more often than not, a lot of times is used interchangeably today. Though transnational studies has today become a separate line, are immigrants who are engaged in border crossing business activity involving their country of origin and destination, which almost is the definition for a diaspora. However, as I said, these two parallel lines. So why this has happened is because let's say an Indian goes from, so typically the classic definition of diaspora also requires certain hops, 2 or 3 hops. But any migrant who stays for a longish period of time or who stays permanently and has a longing back home, we call a diaspora. But today, these diasporas not only are looking at a longing back home, but they are having these networks with other diasporas in other nations. And that's why we are calling this persons transnational. So so I picked up this paper on transnational entrepreneurship. So, and I thought, let me put this out also so that you don't get confused. That suddenly the word transnational comes in. Technology advances related to cheaper transportation, inexpensive communications have enabled TEs to have greater TEs, transnational entrepreneur, greater amount of social, political, and economic influence on home country. And remember, this entrepreneurship need not be economic. entrepreneurship today as like remittances, as we looked at remittances. Remittance, the larger understanding of remittance is money, which is economic, but remittance can also have a social component to it. What we studied in the last unit, social remittances, where these people come back and do social changes, or that money which comes back is able to do social changes in the host society, in the home society. Similarly, entrepreneurs can also look at changes in social patterns, in cultural patterns, in politics. We have seen how diasporas are now indirectly and directly influencing political parties in India. By initially it was by money, but now there is a public opinion which gets formed. There is lobbying which is being done in the past for establishment of economic and political links between host and home countries. Migration scholars have previously discussed migrant entrepreneurship mainly centered on the country of residence. So more often than not, earlier, how the scholars would look at entrepreneurship, migrant entrepreneurship, is in terms of countries of residence. But now it has shifted. Core focus of analysis, the home country as an agent influencing the widespread of the new migration pattern and the main beneficiary of the effect that the new patterns may have on economic, social, cultural. And inevitably, we will also, we know now that any one field affects every other field. So if there is a remittance coming back, which allows girls to continue education, would lead to girl child getting educated, would lead to her demanding a job, would lead her to, to have economic independence, would lead to a certain equality between. And what we are seeing today, let's say in the Indian society, there is this tensions which are happening in families. There are divorces which have in the divorce rates have increased. There is a pushback from the traditional society about things have changed and the youngsters have changed. That is because of all these social changes which are happening. There is this free flow of people going back and forth, and when they come back with new ideas. That ideas could be cultural. So when Halloween starts getting or Valentine Day starts getting celebrated in the country, there is a pushback from the traditional forces which say these are alien to us. The youngsters want fun, and these traditional forces don't want this to happen. And then there is this tug of war which happens. There are tensions which get created. So the transnational entrepreneurs are able to do all these in terms of economic development, social development, new cultural values. We are already seeing political spheres and agendas contributing to democratization in home countries. So, for example, the Indian government is bringing this broadcasting bill. It's a very hush-hush kind of a bill. I was only seeing it today. What certain elements of the bill. So now, if you are on social media and you are, let's say, posting a political, comment or retweeting or sharing anything on the political domain, you will be categorized as a broadcaster, which could have consequences. So obviously, this is a pushback from the traditional politic politics into not trying to have a new idea which is coming in. Social media is new. So there are all these tensions which are coming in, and this is worldwide. We are seeing this. Impact of globalization on diaspora investment and entrepreneurship. Recent research suggests that diaspora can contribute to economic development. We know that, we have seen that. High level of diaspora entrepreneurship tend to have promising prospect for economic. See, another thing of the fact is that more often than not, these diasporas, because of the cultural engagement, when they invest in a country, obviously any investment or any entrepreneurship or any business is for making money. But there is this thing that because there is this cultural connection, the diaspora investment will be plowed back in the country rather than taken out like a multinational does. So today, for all the business which is generated by multinationals, a large part of it is taken out to the parent company. Whereas one of the factors of diaspora is the fact that the money will keep coming back into the country. Uh, uh, Economic growth as well proactive diaspora, and then it will also lead to diaspora proactive diaspora engagement policies, good governance, positive socio-economic perception, critical mass of human and social capital, accessibility to financial institutions and pool of capital. That's how the various scholars look at it. In fact, we had seen in some one of the last units or the other units on policy how the liberalization of India in 1990s was also because of the fact that the diaspora started putting pressure on the political elites, saying that the policies which were being implemented in India were out of step with the world. In fact, today also there is a major pushback which happens when the government comes out with illogical policies or policies which have a particular slant to it. There is a blowback. Diaspora entrepreneurship is an example of protected market hypothesis, which gives an entrepreneur market with less risk and uncertainty. Now, let's don't worry about this protected market. That's a hypothesis. You can read about it. You can Google about it if you want to know more about it. Essentially, it's saying that diaspora entrepreneurship, when the diaspora works in the home country, it is less risk in the sense because you know the culture, you know the know the country, you have associations, you have networks. Attraction of diaspora needs to be addressed properly by the government of homeland through different relaxation and initiative, which can further lead to homeland development. And that's where the politics comes in. So when the government, and inevitably a lot of times I keep hearing the fact that for example, India diaspora policies sometimes is not conducive. Now the a Indian diaspora is huge, and Indian diaspora is diverse. Besides that, India itself is huge and diverse. And now to try and balance the local with the diaspora. So now if you try and give too many sops to the diasporas, the local industry will say, but we are here, why not us? And that balancing becomes difficult. And more often than not, remember, everything has politics in it, politics based on various factors. That's what typically leads to sometimes policy paralysis. Things don't move. But we know the fact that today diaspora has become a very potent force for new ventures and expansion of existing ones, establishing risk sharing mechanism through different loan insurance, credit guarantees, diaspora entrepreneurship in the planning of industrial development. Today, the whole policy making becomes that much more complex, but becomes that much more easy with the kind of different forums. I've been following the US elections and the way the presidential candidates are mobilizing funds for their election campaign. And we have a Indian African candidate which is currently supposed to get nominated from the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, and how she's been mobilizing funds. There are Zoom calls by which these funds are being mobilized. So the technology tools are today available for this engagement. What is required is a governance structure or a process structure in how to get these engagements in. Usually gives effect to different dimensions of the society. It can create employment, develop infrastructure, increase economic capacity of stakeholders, especially after 2000, Indian diaspora initiated large number of entrepreneurship. So the unit is talking about some of these entrepreneurs ventures. I have not picked it up. For example, Apollo Hospital is an entrepreneurship venture. At the national level, Ministry of External Affairs has a number of special programs for overseas Indians. nodal agency for matters relating to overseas Indians, non-NRIs and OCIs, handles aspects of immigration and return of immigrant, established robust and vibrant institutional framework to facilitate and support uh, and so on and so forth. You can read it on the MEA website. Now there was something on the on which was said overseas India facilitation center. So I was very curious. So I went and checked out what is this facilitation center. It was more like a consular service. I didn't get too much of information. Though today a website becomes a very important tool for information dispersal. Unfortunately, the Indian Overseas Indian Facilitation Center did not have too much of information. It was more like a consular service, have jurisdiction on all matters related to overseas Indian living. They are headed by director level. Again, not too much of information. So existing engagement analysis were made. Most of the diaspora at the first time enter, some of whom came to India post KT, mostly professionals. Entire concentration in India can be observed in five major sectors: education, healthcare, IT infrastructure, energy, and environment. So if you Google on where all these entrepreneurship activities, education, I know there are a lot of diasporas who are directly working on education. They are giving scholarship. A lot of diaspora organizations are giving grants and scholarships to Indians to study abroad. In IT, three types of diaspora relations can be observed. Just a minute, just a minute. Investment in Indian IT industry, WNS Global Service, Mastech, knowledge diaspora went earlier after education, want to come back and participate. Professional not prepared to return permanently, but would like to contribute in there. So there are a whole lot of diasporas who do not want to return, but want to engage with the Indian development, Silicon Valley professional. A lot of them have become venture capitalists. We know about the TAI groups, which angel investors, which give funding. Organizations like Tamil Association of North India, America, Toronto, Kolkata Foundation, American Association. There are all these organizations which are working towards development of Indian education, initiatives like scholarships, school modernization, construction of hostels, facilitation of meritorious students. So I picked up the first one, and Federation of Tamil Sangams of North America, FETIN. In fact, FETIN is having its 37th convention on 4th, 5th, had on 4th, 5th, and 6th July 2024 in Texas. There is a convention, they talk about membership, they talk about teams, they talk about events, they talk about committees, and there is a button on donate now. So it's an active organization, and obviously you can go and check out what these organizations are doing. You can, and there are enough of these organizations. And remember, it's a cultural connection. So they want to contribute. They are looking to contribute. They want to be involved in the development. So let's sum up. Tend to integrate with home country, not a new concept. Dramatically enhanced after globalization, increasing cross-border entrepreneurship activity. Countries of origin are trying hard to attract diasporic talents and resource, while countries of destination want to increase the effectiveness of the development. Everybody is now looking at this population, and we also looked at the fact that in the US, even after the migrants are remitting, not just Indian, all migrants are remitting the kind of money they are remitting back home. The migrants still are able to contribute to the US economy. And US is the classic case where the politics of US is currently in an anti-immigration policy where one particular party is, going dissing the immigrants, and yet the US economy works only on immigrants. In fact, if you see the Indian Americans, and we showed it in the last PPT, the Indian Americans' median income is almost double the white Americans. So Indian Americans or the Taiwanese Americans or the Chinese Americans or Japanese Americans do a lot in terms of the US economy. Similarly, each country is trying to woo, their diaspora. See, if today India does not have a particular skill, the best way to acquire that skill is to woo immigrants. But among immigrants, the best immigrant to woo would be the diasporas, because diasporas already have a cultural connection with the country. Now, if a South Korean or an African or a Russian were to come in India, he or she would find it a little difficult considering cultures, considering the way things function, but an Indian would be at home. And that is why all countries are trying to move their diasporas. Home and host countries both can contribute to economic development. High level of diaspora entrepreneurship tends to have promising prospects for economic growth. Proactive diaspora engagement, and that for that you need proactive diaspora engagement policies, good governance, positive social cultural perceptions of entrepreneurship, critical mass of human and social capital. So, for example, critical skills can quickly be, be acquired by people who are diasporas. And today, with development of technology, as I was giving the example of this Chinese surgeon operating from 5,000 kilometers away using a robotic arm, well, if you don't have that kind of a skill, you can always acquire that skill using your diaspora. Okay, there are some references: ethnicity and entrepreneurship, annual review of sociology, developing a roadmap for engaging diasporas in development. In fact, the key today becomes the fact that how do you engage diaspora? I think the biggest challenge for India today would be how to engage these diasporas and these diverse diasporas to enable them to contribute to a faster an emerging country, a developing country like India would require all the resources, all the skills, and that's where the challenge is to how to engage with them, how to bring in diaspora friendly policies, at the same time not ignoring the local businesses, local entrepreneurships, and so on and so forth. Okay, I stop here. Let me put on my video. Hi. Anything that you'd like to add? Anything that you want to ask?
Sir, please elaborate social remittances with the help of an example, please.
So, so social remittances is something could be, say, for example, Punjab has a huge diaspora, let's say in Canada. Now, the fact is, all these people, if they are remitting money back into the Punjab villages, what typically happens is, it could lead to development of bigger and better amenity houses, could be one. But second, it could also mean, for example, in poor families, now for example, the girl child can continue education rather than drop out because there is money for education. Now, what typically happens if the girl starts getting educated, we still have a large dropout of students in the education sector. So if the girls are getting educated, now once they get educated, they will demand a job. If they demand a job, they would want parity with the guys. If they want parity with the guys, there is obviously a socio-economic thing which happens in the country. What typically is happening today, you will see a large amount of girls, of women in the workforce. When women in the workforce come, they want a parity in terms of resources, in terms of opportunities. If they do not get, there is a discord which happens. You see, in the Paris Olympics, we have a women athlete winning two medals. There is one guy who's won one medal. Now, obviously, the women have taken a lead in terms of medals. So there is this thing which happens. So there is a social change which is happening. And the social change can be in multiple places. For
Right.
example, we have let's say we have a social evil like dowry. The girls can start questioning and said, why doesn't, if I am earning better and I'm educated better, why doesn't the guy give a dowry? The movement towards a nuclear family. So the questions are being, so stresses come in society. These are social changes.
Right, sir. Sir, my second
Good with your voice is
request.
cut. Good with your voice is cutting. Can you
You
say
see, the
again?
people thought that USA is the strength of the world. Now it's clear, sir.
No,
Now it's clear, sir.
no. It suddenly
Hello.
in between it starts cutting.
Okay, sir. No issue, please.
Tell,
Please
say again. Say
carry
again. Say.
on.
No, no. Say again.
Sir, USA has the best brains of the world through their migration policy.
Correct.
Your comment, sir.
No, I didn't. You said
For
USA.
example, it has best brains of the world
Huh.
through their migration policy, the type of visa they have.
Correct. See, US is nothing but a country of immigrants. And inevitably, one of the fastest ways they were able to pick up skill was to get all these high skilled immigrants to come in. They changed their policies to get high skilled immigrants. It was already a developed country in terms of opportunities, in terms of infrastructure. So the fact is, and listen, the problem with India, countries like India and China, is in terms of the large number of people and the population. And an additional factor was the fact that India was under a colonial rule for 200 years. So all colonies, to be able to remove that, backwardness, uh, because all the colonies' wealth was drained by the colonizers. Uh, so today, Domingos, US, you can go on, you can go and Google in terms of the immigration policy. For example, the same is with a lot of these Western nations. They would identify a specific need that they have, and they would reduce the immigration barriers on the they are able to quickly because of the lower number of in terms of population, they are able to quickly determine where they need people. Guys, are you able to hear? It says my internet is, hang on, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so what typically, my internet was coming unstable, so I switched off my video. So inevitably, what these countries are able to do is quickly determine what kind of skills they require. And based on their skills, they move around their immigration policy. Now, because these are smaller countries, less diverse, and their policy making, or the way they go about is much more structured, they are able to quickly move things in whatever way. So today, for example, it is becoming difficult very shortly, or how the Republican Party is putting in, they'll cut a stoppage on immigrants or immigration. And US has already tightened its visa norms. For example, the B1 visa, on which a lot of Indian techies and others used to go, there's a sharp cut in that. So these people keep moving their policies to attract skill sets which they need for the development of their country. Unfortunately, for a large country like India, where things are centralized. See, remember, for example, European countries are very small. Canada, US, again, there is a certain amount of federal, and there's a federal structure, and the governments are able to move fast. For an Indian, because of centralized big country, too much diversity, the movement becomes much slower. The processes, the governance becomes a tricky part. So, Domingos, that's how their immigration policy keeps moving in terms of what skill they require, and they subsequently cut or increase their immigrant quotas. And you can always Google and figure out what it is currently which is going on. And Gurpreet, again, the fact is, see, that is where possibly countries today have to look at each other, especially the global south, would need to collaborate with each other in terms of skills. And this lone wolf concept anyway is outdated now, but countries still are trying to do this lone wolf. I want to do everything, which is not possible because neither the global south has that capital. It might have that skill, but the capital is not there. And in the absence of capital and infrastructure, the skill will quickly migrate. Today, every person with any particular skill would look at where he or she would like to exploit that skill to get the maximum return. And that is why the global south loses a lot of skill to the global north, because global north is able to give that infrastructure for the skill. Gurpreet?
True, sir. Sir, got it, sir.
Okay.
Sir, listening voice is clear. Got it, please. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Any other comment or question? Let me see if I can put my video on. Here I am again. And yes,
sir.
Sean. Yes, Sean.
On that, what about this H1B visa holders? Will they come under the diaspora? I mean, they're not classified as immigrants, right?
H1B visa is a 10-year visa for skilled workers. So these people are non-resident Indians.
Okay.
So they are migrants in a way. Diaspora would typically be people who are staying in the residency in that country. H1B visa could be for 6 months they are going and coming back. The visa is for 10 years, but they are going for a specific assignment and coming back. So they would be non-resident Indians rather than diasporas. Again, how you define is what works.
Okay.
See, it's all about definitions. It's also about definition. So are migrants diasporas? Well, it's a long-term migrant, then it could be classified as a diaspora, but he or she can also be classified as a migrant. For example, people in the Gulf can never get a citizenship, so they're always migrants, but they are diasporas.
Okay, yeah.
So it's how we define. See, in academics and scholarly pursuits, always start with the definition. Who are we defining? So whenever somebody uses a particular term, say, how are you defining it? Okay, John?
Yes, sir, got it.
By the way, you were talking about the Ghanan music and the circuit. Rema's initial Nigerian name is Divine something. That's what his Nigerian name is.
Oh, okay. I never checked.
So I Googled. So he's Divine Iflo something. He's got a Nigerian name, but Rema is his stage name.
Yeah, that much I knew. Because he came for a tour and I was just wondering, where is this? Like, how did he become so big in India?
Yeah. No, he has a hit called Calm Down.
Yeah.
So the latest hit was what the reason why he was invited to the Ambani wedding.
Okay. That makes sense.
So that hit was a major world hit. And he besides others are promoting this African Afrobeat music.
Afrobeat. Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
So the other day also my friend asked me, why is Afrobeat becoming a thing in India? And it seems he did some research and found out it was something the cultural movement started somewhere in Europe.
Yes. I'm sure. See, today these transnational movements are, and that is where, things like Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts you can see how these cultural movements are moving.
Yes, sir.
I'm following the Kamala Harris campaign and how she's getting this musicians to endorse her, how the music is being played out, what is coming, who's it becomes interesting. If you start looking at it scholarly, you
Mhm.
look at the fact how things move.
Yes, sir. I saw a lot of criticism also at the same time because uh, she has been kind of pandering to the African American voters, and some Indians got very offended that she was raised by a Tamil mother and
No, that see
well,
again, the Republican line of attack is talking about, in fact, there was a disastrous Trump interview which was given
yes,
to
sir.
the Association of Black Journalists, where he brings out the Indian. See, essentially, how the politics is being played out is American Indians are a big and a strong community out there, a
Yes, yes,
strong voting bloc, and blacks are another strong politically voting bloc. So he's trying to, or the Republicans are trying to split this bloc, because once this bloc comes together,
yes, sir.
the the white bloc can be easily so it's
Yes, sir.
each particular country's politics is different. As a scholar, you try and look at and try and understand how this is functioning. it's
Sure.
it is it is always interesting. Scholarly pursuits are always interesting that way.
Yes, sir, it is. But
Okay.
also, it's showing the common symptoms of this divide and rule policy.
Which is there. See, listen, today worldwide there is always a polarization, and a very strong polarization which has happened. The social media encourages that polarization, because all of us have got stuck in some filter bubble based on our cognitive biases, and it happens. So this particular happens, so there's nothing wrong about it, but that's the way the world is unfolding. And that is why it is very important to continue to have multiple perspectives without before making an opinion. See, it's very easy today to make an opinion, because I can easily get stuck into a filter bubble. I believe something, I will see all posts, social media posts on that particular angle to the thing, and I will believe that's the truth. But
Yes,
the
sir.
truth always lies between various perspectives. So one needs to understand that, look at multiple authors, multiple scholars, what they are saying, to arrive at some amount of understanding of what it is all about. There is always nothing right or wrong, true or false. These are perspectives.
Yes, sir.
Uh, uh, yeah,
Related to the text, I just had a little bit of a confusion. What is
what is?
the difference between cultural enterprises and ethnic enterprises? Actually, even the first
So,
one, circuit
huh,
form, seems to.
So, Chong, inevitably, they may overlap, but cultural enterprises typically is, for example, let's say, as I was giving example about South Indian spices. Now, South Indian spices could open a outlet in North India, could open an outlet in East India or Northeast India. And now you are the whole North India or East India or Northeast India uh, is made aware of South Indian spices. So what are the South Indian spices? That's a cultural kind of thing. Whereas ethnic would be, you have let's say in Northeast a whole section of Punjabi population from Punjab who are settled out there, and a guy opens up a shop to cater to those Punjabi people from Punjab, or the Punjab in terms of that particular ethnic segment,
Yes.
right? So an Indian curry shop in London would be typically a cultural thing,
Mm.
because it is catering to the whole London. But at the same time, if there is this Indian curry shop in Brampton or somewhere where there are Indians, that would be a ethnic kind of a business.
Okay, sir, got it.
Okay? So a lot of times these are not watertight compartments. A lot of them overlap each other. That's why I said they as explanations, they have been given separate categorizations, but they typically overlap.
That's right.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Domingos, yes, you're right. Ambani wedding, and it's the wedding is still not over. It continues. And remember, this is not a wedding. It's a giant PR, endeavor for, for the, the Reliance is spreading its business. So it's a giant PR venture for the world to get familiar with Reliance brand. So yes, it's a wedding of the century. That's right. Okay. We've already reached the end of the class. So meet you next Saturday at 3 o'clock. We'll be doing knowledge and technology transfer, the last unit of this particular block. Have a nice weekend and a nice week ahead. See you next Saturday at 3 o'clock. Bye-bye then.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye-bye.